Good Monday morning. It is the FloTrack podcast. My name is Lincoln Shrike, joined today by Gordon Mack. It is Monday, April 27th. Gordon, how you doing today?
Doing all right. Time flying by. April 27th already. Can't believe it. We're almost in May, which is wild.
I know. If track was happening right now, we'd be preparing to get ready for conference meets coming up already. The season would have, at least in the NCAA portion of it, would have been more than halfway done. It's crazy to think because it seems like just a couple days ago the season got canceled, but that's how quick things have moved. Time is both moving slow and moving incredibly fast. We've entered a new dimension, it feels like. One thing I wanted to ask you before we get started on today's show, which little preview, we're going to be doing a mailbag episode, getting back on some emails that maybe we've neglected for a little bit because there's just been so much going on. We haven't had time to get to those emails. But Gordon, I want to ask you about the NFL draft. The Eagles, I'm sure they had other picks of note, but selecting Jalen Hurts in the second round, what was your take on that?
So I'm the type of Philadelphia fan who is the very polar opposite of every Philadelphia fan, and I am very trustworthy of GM decisions. So while I don't understand it, I don't understand why we need Jalen Hurts to back up a 27-year-old franchise quarterback. I do, for some weird reason, just be like, hey, we want a really good second round. We want a really good second string quarterback because if you think about it, the Eagles kind of relied on second string quarterbacks for the past 2 decades, all the way back to like the Jeff Garcia era when he was winning playoff games for us behind Donovan McNabb. Obviously, Nick Foles wins us a Super Bowl. So, I mean, Mike Vick was a backup at one point, and then he comes in. And Mark Sanchez was a backup. We had Tim Tebow. We just love backup quarterbacks. I don't know. It was wild. One thing that I did like from the draft was that we traded for Marquise Goodwin. So the Eagles now have an Olympian long jumper on their team. And I texted Carl Lewis after we traded for Marquise Goodwin. And I said, because Carl's a huge Eagles fan. And I said, hey, man, we got an Olympian on our team. He's like, I forget what he said. He said, my goodness. And like thumbs up. So he was happy. I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, how many track and field Olympians on the NFL? 1. And now I can root for him because he's an Eagle. So I was happy with that. Let's try to get him on the pod.
The Eagles' offensive weapons, they should be plenty enough if Carson Wentz can stay on the field. And if not, I guess you have Jalen Hurts. And if Carson Wentz does stay healthy, maybe a trade chip. But
we'll trade him to the Bears. You can have another Eagles quarterback.
We get a lot of old Eagles players. Are you ready for Marquise Goodwin's touchdown celebrations where he mimics track and field moves? Doesn't he do that? Doesn't he do long jump, like hurdles?
Yeah, he does long jump. He does a bunch of different like Olympic posturing moves. One thing that's kind of interesting, the Eagles actually, now that Goodwin's on the team, I go on a lot of Eagles Reddit threads, and that's what I've been doing basically the past 5 days. It's just like posting Eagle memes on the internet and just doing my thing. Anyway, cool. When we think about track speed, right, in the NFL, everyone kind of reverts to Kansas City, right? Because they have Tyreek Hill, they got a bunch of fast guys, right? Obviously, Hill being the star. But they were doing some stats, and the Eagles' top 4 guys, top 40 times, like compares to Kansas City. And I don't know. I think a Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins, and now Marquise Goodwin, that 4x1 would be pretty good. No?
Well, Deshaun Jackson would be the Justin Gatlin because he's like in his 30s, right?
Yeah.
He's well into his 30s.
Jackson's like 33. He's like 33.
Okay. But well, he seems like he's been around a lot longer than that. But anyways.
There one podcast or YouTube video show I watch a lot, especially lately because of the NFL draft, is the Pat McAfee Show. And there's a moment when they talk about Kansas City's speed because they have Tyreek Hill and they might get another guy. He said that Kansas City's 4x1 could win a international medal, like would be one of the top teams in the world. And I was like, well, that's that. I mean, it's coming from a football player, really not. That's not true.
Former
obviously.
Kicker. That's like a former kicker is making that assessment.
But it made
The
me
people
think
who
about it would.
I was going to say the
obviously,
people
but
who think they know about track and field speed. There's so many people who think their opinions just because it's just running. They think they're like qualified to say they could win an Olympic medal, and it's just like that doesn't hold any weight with real track and field fans. Like that's not accurate.
yeah. Obviously it's not accurate. I mean, Tyreek Hill, though, I do honestly believe if he focused only on track, Tyreek Hill probably would be making world teams, I think. If he only focused on track, because he was good in high school. He ran 20.0 something in high school. So I think if he focused, but obviously now he's bigger, so he's not going to be able to have that speed. Anyway, regardless. But what it made me think about is it would be cool if during these times of craziness that the NFL decided to put on a track meet, right? And every football team has to like put together a 4x1, have like 3 guys on the 400, have like a long jump competition, have a shot put for your linemen. And it'll be kind of cool to see which football team would win a track meet. Have 32 teams all come together and they all got to, you make the, maybe you sub. I'm not sure. I mean, you may be able to find some athletes who do like a 1500, maybe the quarterbacks or something. I don't know, but it'll be cool. I don't know, especially seeing like a 4x1 where you have like they're literally wearing like track kits that are like look like their NFL jerseys. Would be kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be for this. I mean, I think they should have to do all the events. Yeah, you have to do 800. You have to get people out there for the 10K, maybe the kickers for the 10K. And then the coaches for the race walk. I mean, I get Andy Reid in the race walk. No, I don't know. I would just the relays, like sprint relays, maybe just up to the 400 would be pretty fascinating. You get some of those running backs maybe to do the 400, maybe receivers. There's a lot of talent, and at least we could finally have some material to talk about when we compare football speed to track speed. We'd have some evidence when the 100 was won and inevitably like 10-2, and that'd be impressive, but still yet it's nothing compared to what they're doing in professional track and field. That I would absolutely watch an NFL track meet.
I mean, they should just cancel the Pro Bowl and have an NFL track meet. Like, that's what they should do. No one watches the Pro Bowl, but everyone would watch an NFL track meet. That would make track more like we'd always talk about like ways to get more eyes of people interested in track. It would make track more popular because it would just create like a track meet that everyone is going to watch. And then maybe people will be like, oh, wow. And then when people see the times and when they watch it, they'll be thinking it's interesting. And then they put up a time, be like, yeah, you thought that was cool. This is what Noah Lyles and Christian Coleman do. And everyone's like, oh, really? And then you have an actual, this is what you do. Then you actually have an actual professional track meet after or right before.
Right.
So and you get USATF involved to kind of partner with the NFL. So USATF puts on the NFL track meet and they partner it with like Prefontaine Classic or whatever. And I think people would, they always say like whatever TV show comes on after the Super Bowl gets like millions of ratings, put on actual track meet after the NFL track meet and you get lots of ratings. I don't know. Just an idea.
Yeah.
It would be cool.
Everyone's 2 favorite organizations coming together for a collaboration, USATF and NFL. Max Siegel, Roger Goodell in the same boardroom. Let's do it. No, I'd be supportive of that. I don't think it'll ever happen, but at least at bare minimum, if we can ask for like a race between some U.S. sprinter and like Tyreek Hill. Like I know Matthew Bowling gets on Twitter and like is down to race any of these guys. So I know he's a collegiate, so that could be a little complicated, but I would love to see the fastest guy in the NFL and just a good but not great sprinter race. And I would love to see the outcome there. I would be stunned if the NFL person won, but I don't know. We can't have it be like Christian Coleman because obviously Christian Coleman would win. But just like a good sprinter against the fastest guy in the NFL. I think the track guy would stomp him. I'd love to see that race because I don't think we're going to get a full-fledged track meet. But I mean, I'm here for it either way. And then, a throwers relay, so maybe a lineman 4x1. I'm also I'd be there
Break
for
it up
that
a bit
as well.
on me. Hopefully you come back. Okay.
Am I here with you?
Okay, now I got you. A little technical difficulties. Apologies.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So you're saying, yeah, at least we want to. I mean, we're not going to get Coleman versus NFL, but it would be cool to just get somebody versus an actual track athlete.
Yeah, I just think we offer up Matthew Bowling, and then they bring in Tyreek Hill.
Internet, man, everyone's coming back. It's Monday. Are you there?
Yeah, are you there?
Yeah, we keep freezing. If you listen to the audio, it's going to be really wild right now because we're talking over each other. But apologies for that. We're good now. Let's just should we just end this conversation and head to the emails?
Let's do it.
So we got a bunch of emails that have come in the past few weeks that we kind of ignored because we got other stuff to talk about, like Oregon Mount Rushmore and all this different things that we've been doing over the past few weeks. And so, yeah, we're going to dive into the mailbag. Again, email us, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Toll-free number, right? That's what they say. But actually, this first email kind of connects to what we've been talking about. This email comes from Patrick. He says, why don't you see professional sprint training groups like distance athletes? Distance has Bowerman Track Club. New Balance has their core groups across the U.S., Brooks Beast, Reebok, Boston Track Club, etc. Is sprinting more individualizing, or is there an ego, you think? This is from Pat.
Yeah. There are, of course, sprinting training groups. I mean, Dennis Mitchell controversially has his in Florida. Noah Lyles why can't I think of what's the name of the Noah Lyles training group there in Florida? I mean, there's a bunch of people. Shawnee Miller-Weibo is in that group. Many, many other names. So there are those types of things. They don't wear the team kits, and I'm not sure why that is. Probably because there's different sponsors and whatnot. I don't know why the brands haven't decided to brand them in much the way the distance groups have, but there of course are training groups that are broken up across the country. There's groups in California, Dalila Muhammad's group with Boogie Johnson. There's plenty of elite sprint and hurdle groups around the country and the world. It's just they, for whatever reason, aren't branded the way, say, the Bowerman Track Club is.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that the distance runners lean hard into the team aspect by having the team name really having a team Twitter account, an Instagram account, having your team kit. Everything is kind of centered around this is my training group team. Even though it is individual, even on the distance side, you don't say I run for Nike, you say I run for Bowerman, or you don't say I run for Brooks, you say I run for Brooks Beast. Whereas the sprinters don't do that. I mean, and you could argue that's because the sprinters. Some of the sprinters, it's because it's different training groups. But even the ones that don't really have, Lance Brahman's group is majority Adidas. They could, I think it's maybe, I don't know, who is who is it? Nike that wants Bowerman Track Club to exist, or is it Bowerman Track Club that wants to exist and then Nike sponsors it? You know what I mean?
Oh, I assume Nike's calling the shots there. But I could be wrong. Another thing that I would imagine is, when you get as high profile as, say, Noah Lyles, they don't want anything in the way of standing between people understanding that he is represented by Adidas. They don't want pure, isn't it like pure something?
Pure Athletics.
Pure Athletics is the name of his training group. And he could wear a kit, I guess, with that emblazoned on the front. But I don't think Adidas, knowing how high profile he is, they don't want anyone to be confused about who his sponsor is when he's getting all this notoriety. I could be wrong, but they know that, regardless of what Noah Lyles does, he's going to get more attention than Evan Jager, just because of the status of the 100 and the 200 compared to the steeplechase. So I that would be my opinion is Adidas just wants their name front and center with everything when it comes to Noah Lyles. and other top sprinters, of course. And I think that's the same. And it could also just be as simple as, not everybody in a training group has the same sponsor. But that's a good question. I just imagine that it's deliberate on the part of the sponsorship to just have a clear demarcation of what, who is the sponsor of these really, really high profile Olympic medal winning athletes.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. But like, you say it's just because, maybe these shoe companies look at the marquee sprinter as more ideal. But I mean, yeah, you can say that for Noah Lyles because he's in the realm of becoming, the next Bolt or like the face of U.S. track and field. But like, why doesn't, like the like, I don't know, like why doesn't like Corey Carter's group, like Coach Flo's group, have like a name, like why doesn't Adidas like create a name around Corey Carter or not? I guess around like Kenny Harris. I guess they're all different sponsors.
It's just different sponsors. I mean, we got somebody in the same group. Yeah, Corey Carter's Jordan, Jenna Prandini's Puma, Kenny Harrison's Adidas. I mean, it's just that's just the complicated thing of it. And a lot of those training groups too, there's those coaches have college affiliations. And so where you look at Coach Flo, I mean, he can't have a sponsor because he's at the University of Texas. Whereas obviously Jerry Schumacher can just be a Nike employee because he's not coaching college. I don't think it's something that maybe I think it's something that's more incidental that's happened over anything. I mean, I think the Bowerman thing and the NOP thing happened in collaboration with the brands and the athletes wanting their own and coaches wanting their own thing. And I don't know. I mean, there's not a ton of like elite distance training groups in the country. There's like 7 to 10. I mean, that are officially sponsored. So there are sprinting training groups. They just don't necessarily get the top notoriety that the distance groups get as far as their actual names. But Pure Athletics is a thing. They've named it, and I think it is in some ways sponsored by Adidas. I mean, you see the coach Lance Brownman; he always wears Adidas, I think. So it's just not as high, I guess, as big as the branding of the distance teams. Yeah, and I think just like, I don't know, track and field, it's just hard to create these, like, use the word fake, but like, like, I guess you could use the word fake teams because in a way they are, because the point of the team doesn't win anything, right? It's all about the individual winning things, right? So even though Bowerman Track Club, you could say, is a team, it's not really though, right? It's just, it's a group of people who all have the same sponsor. That's really what it is, and have the same coach. And unless they're really looking out for which team won the distance team competition at USA's article that you always write.
Yes, that's true.
Inevitably always Bowerman Track Club because they have 10 times more people than anybody else. Maybe they're really leaning into that. So, I mean, like we always talk about like how, like, I mean, Grant Holloway tweeted out like, why isn't there a track and field draft? And people were like, well, they tried it with the Tracktown series. And the real reason why there's no like team aspect in track and field, one is because the sport's not designed to be a team sport because we all qualify individually. But I mean, it's a whole, like, the sponsors don't really work in that mindset, right? All the contracts are just like separate with an individual, and the teams just need to form on their own if a coach wants to do it, right? Or have like a Jerry group or, a Danny Mackey group. But what I'm trying to get to is, excuse me. Oh man, it's not COVID. Don't worry. Didn't say anything.
Like, imagine if like we could do like a reset, right? Where everyone's contracts just all of a sudden became null and void, right? You get paid out for the remaining of what you were owed, but everyone has to sign a new deal starting in 2021, right? Oh man. And imagine, like, do you think there could ever be a world where I guess you can't, because Brooks is not going to want to spend as much. I mean, it is kind of like that. Like, the Yankees are willing to spend more money than the Marlins. So you could argue Nike is willing to spend more money than Brooks. So, could there be a situation? I guess you can't draft. It's all free agents. There's no drafting because everyone's a free agent when you graduate. I'm just trying to think if there's a way where Nike can draft someone, then Adidas gets to pick someone. So like when we did our virtual track and field draft, with the first pick, Adidas picks Danny Jones. With the second pick, Nike picks Joe Klecker, and back and forth.
But why did Adidas have the first pick?
I don't know. I
They
guess
just
that makes
did.
sense. Yeah.
It's
just a free market. Yeah.
You gotta
There's
have
no free market in the NFL. It's like it's literally you
own your labor.
You require your own labor, which is kind of weird that we do that. Should we get rid of drafts in general? Why is there a draft in professional sports?
It'd be a lot cooler if it was just all free agency. I'd love that. I mean, because people would you'd still have to get under, salary caps and all that. So it's not like you could just we're gonna hire all the best players. But I would be down for that. I mean, I guess that would hurt some of the smaller teams. I mean, no one's gonna be signed with Buffalo probably, but I would love for it for the NFL. I mean, the draft is fun, but for it to be truly, we're supposed to have a free market economy. I mean, that would be. This isn't the military going to the Vietnam War. I mean, we shouldn't have drafts. People should just get to sign, and therefore in the NBA, the Bulls would probably have Zion Williamson, and I don't know. They'd be in a lot better position if the people in charge weren't forced to make the picks, but. I guess we've gone down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, there is a free market though in basketball because the shoe companies, it's a free market, right? So
yeah.
LeBron signs with Nike, right? That's a free market, type thing. Yep. So, but what I'm basically another email coming in, kind of connected. This is from Joe. He sent this 8 days ago. He basically said, paraphrasing, would it be cool to have again, track and field dual meet where your team is basically your sponsor, and so doesn't matter where you are in the country, what country you're from. So basically everyone in the world, right? But your team is basically whoever your sponsor is, and you score it. 3 athletes per sponsor, which is the team, and they have to run. You have 3 athletes in the 100 for 3 New Balance athletes in the 100, 3 Nike athletes in the 100, etc. And you basically do all the events, and it's scored 5-3-1, basically.
You know who would win that? Style. Nike.
Who would win that?
Nike would win that.
But would they be? Is there a? Does Nike have Nike has a little bit of everybody and everyone?
Of course.
Is there any event? Is there any? I guess Adidas doesn't have enough athletes.
Let me run down the men's side. The 100, Christian Coleman.
But Noah Lyles could win the 100.
Yeah, the 200 Christian Coleman or Michael Norman, and Noah Lyles would probably win that. So yeah, I mean Noah Lyles would be a big point getter. The 400 Michael Norman or Fred Curley, the 800 Donovan Brazier.
Van Niekerk. What about Van Niekerk?
This is worldwide.
Yeah, it's worldwide. So yeah, it's worldwide.
I love this. This is good. This is much better than the Impossible Games. Still taking probably Michael Norman. But who is I think Gardner's sponsor is Adidas, so Adidas might have a little answer there in the 400. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess it would be a little closer. I still think Nike, they got a lot of throwers too. I mean, Adidas doesn't sponsor throwers if I'm not mistaken. So the field was where it would really get messy, I think, for Adidas and other brands. I mean, New Balance would be really counting on their women's distance events. They'd have to pull a lot of points there. So still think Nike would overwhelmingly come on top to show how much control they have over the sport on the sponsorship level of athletes. But I would love to watch this meet. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the writer Joe, he did say Nike would dominate, but I mean, it just shows that Nike basically dominates because of the numbers, right? They're the only ones investing and giving, Joe Kovacs a sponsorship deal and Darryl Hill a sponsorship deal. And
excuse me, that's
Ryan
world
Crowder.
Champion Joe Kovacs. Okay.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, but Brooks isn't stepping up to give a triple jumper money, whereas Nike.
Yeah, they just may not have the resources to do that. But no, Nike is it's a paradox that so many. I understand they in the trade-off for sponsoring those people, they exercise a ton of control over the sport, and they basically own USATF. But I don't know where the sport would be without Nike. I'm not a shill for them, but at the same time, they are building an economy that wouldn't be there for a lot of these other athletes, so good on them in that regard, even if you don't like some of their other actions throughout the years.
So I've enough of this team sponsor, all this stuff that's never going to change. Everyone's going to go to Nike. Everyone's going to go to Nike, or one guy's going to go to Adidas, and that person's going to be Noah Lyles. And then we just watch them run. Anyway, all right. So this is actually a good email from Lynn. It's called My Distance Running Pet Peeves. Hey, FloTrack guys, my distance running pet peeves. Let me know what you think about them. So she lists 3. Then maybe you can give some of your distance running pet peeves that you have, Lincoln, if you have any. First pet peeve: when runners are standing at the line waiting for the race to start, introductions are way too long. These poor runners have warmed up just right for the race to start at time, and then there's a 5 to 10 minute for each runner to be introduced. It's ridiculous. That's a good way to ruin a good warm up. I do agree that when you feel like you're ready to go when I was training in college and high school, I timed it. I was like, I want to start my run. I want to the gun to go off at this exact time. And if you even if it's 30 seconds, it feels off. I'm ready to go. I don't want to stand too long. How do you feel about having to stand on the starting line? Do you think that sometimes, especially in diamond leagues, they take a long time of them introducing everyone? What do you think?
So the worst I've ever seen this was this past February at the U.S. Olympic Marathon trials. I swear to God, they brought the guys up, and I wasn't there for the start of the women's race. The women came after the men, but they brought the men up to the starting line, and they introduced them in kind of waves. Well, they introduced basically the main players, and then they kind of let everyone else trickle behind them. It took at least 5 minutes of them standing on the starting line for them to get going, and the national anthem was factored in there, to the point where Galen Rupp on the start line just took a seat. He just sat on the concrete and just sat down while they were waiting to go. It was ridiculous. It took forever, to the point where it was just getting weird, and it was they couldn't do strides. They were done with that. And I would have been so aggravated. Now I understand a marathoner, you're going to loosen up throughout the race. It's 26 miles after all, but that was bizarre. I'd never seen something like that. Yeah, everyone knows when it's been too long. Rarely is there a situation where it's too quick. It's always, introductions and standing on the line. And, you see athletes in the 800, they'll sit on those big cones when it's taken a long time. It does. It takes way too long. And I don't think it has necessarily a negative impact on the race, but it's just annoying when you get the athletes out there. Introductions take forever. I mean, it's more for a spectator thing. It's just kind of what are we doing here? Why is this taking so long? And ultimately, track has got a timing problem. I mean, and especially you go to high school and college track meets where there's 17 people in the stands, and there's a reason it's that, because the meet takes 17 hours, and we don't need more time added by the fact of waiting to get. It's the one meet that really hasn't figured out is the Penn relays. They freaking finish things up and then they go again. I think the BU indoor meets have this as well. When there's entry after entry after entry, is they get rolling right away. They don't mess around with this. I understand some other meets are high profile and need to make introductions like world championships and diamond leagues and whatnot. But yes, overall, my opinion, let's try to cut down on the time of waiting at the starting line.
It's funny you mentioned Penn relays because I actually look at Penn relays as my example when I was running in high school and college, of my example of no excuse for my performance. And by that, I mean, a lot of times I feel if I need to have the perfect warm up to have the perfect race, right? I need to time everything well. I need to be super fresh. I need to be not standing around for too long or too short of a time. And everything is just timed perfectly where I get to the starting line and then I have my best race. And I always say that's the most important thing. But then I realize, well, if you can run well at Penn relays, this mental gymnastics you do in your head about whether or not you timed your warm up perfectly, it's thrown out the door, because at the Penn relays, you have to stand in that paddock area for like 20 to 25 minutes. A lot of times maybe even be in the rain. And I always learned that, like, hey, if you can do it at Penn relays, you can do it anytime, because Penn relays makes you literally stand on your feet for 25 minutes before you run, which is probably not the most ideal way to the ideal last 25 minutes before your race isn't really what you want. But it does. I think a lot of it's mental, right? I think a lot of, like, you just mentally are telling your body, like, this is what your body needs to be able to be ready to go for a race. And you think, 3 extra minutes on your feet is going to, like, make you more tired, but it really doesn't. I think you're just mentally, like, overthinking it. And so I always look at Penn relays as, I remember standing literally in downpouring, freezing cold rain for 20 minutes and then having to run a 4x4 at Penn relays. It was awful, but it made me think, all right. It's like when Wade Van Niekerk breaks the world record in the 400 in the outside lane. It made every runner realize, I can't use my lane as a reason for my bad race, because a guy broke the world record in the outside lane.
And yet these complaints still happen, but still yet, I mean, I get mine could be deemed contradictory. Still yet, I think, obviously we're not going to have in the Olympics at Franklin Field and going to make Christian Coleman wait in the paddock for 25 minutes for the 100. But I think there could be a balance, right, between having the long introductions, and I don't know. So there's something to be learned. What's Lynn's next running pet peeve?
This is kind of interesting. Disqualifications for a runner stepping on the inside curb. I can't see any way that this could be an advantage.
Well, I mean, I guess the problem is if you would abuse it, you would have some people trying to get the inside lane and trying to cut off a few meters in, say, like an 800 or a 1500. If you're able to run inside the track, you would have people abusing it. So I do understand. Now, one step, no,
that's it. One step. Stepping on the inside.
No, it's not an advantage, but I think you have to have a hard and fast rule, because you would have people trying to abuse it, and then when people would protest, there would be no rule book to go to. There wouldn't be anything to set up the precedent for disqualification. Now, what we found through the years is that rule applies loosely when it comes to high profile names. We know famously in 2017 world champs, Mo Farah stepped on the inside of the track. He did not get disqualified. Last year at the world championships, Jakob Ingebrigtsen was originally disqualified from the 5K prelims for stepping on the inside of the track. And then they protested. And I think his high profileness, if you will, reinstated him. So the rule applies to some people and it doesn't to others. So it's even though it's in the rules, it's up for debate a lot of the times. I agree it doesn't provide an advantage, but I don't know. It's just there are, I do understand, like, rules need to be rules, and I don't know, that one doesn't bother me as much. Just stay on the track, and I understand. I think you need to make exceptions when there's contact, and that's where we need to clarify the issue a little bit. But overall, that one doesn't bother me because, I don't know. It obviously, it doesn't ruin people's races, except for the 2018 World Indoor Championships where everyone got disqualified. So it doesn't become too much of an issue too frequently for me to really hate it.
I mean, the time when it bothers me is when it's inconsistent. Like, I remember I created a GIF of in 2018 during the DQ games that happened when Paul Chalimo got disqualified for stepping on the inside rail. I took a GIF and I showed what Mo Farah did in 2017 in the 10K, I believe, and what Paul Chalimo did. They did the exact same thing, whereas Paul Chalimo was DQ'd and Mo Farah wasn't. And that's what bothers me, is when of course it's not, because it's like both of them, like, especially in a I think it's the idea is that it's in a distance race, right? It's like in a 10K, is 2 inches stepping on the inside lane really going to be the reason you won a 10,000 meter race? Like, no, right?
No.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
idea behind it. Like, it's like, you know,
There
so,
just
I
needs
mean,
to
I think
be
about,
consistent officiating. Like whatever happened at Birmingham, I don't know if the man in charge or woman in charge at the Birmingham World Indoor Championships 2 years ago like had a bad tuna fish sandwich and their stomach was hurting, so they decided to be grumpy to every athlete, or what the deal is. But that was the ultimate, like the most exaggerated case of like bad officiating we had ever seen. There just needs to be some consistency. And I think we can agree with you kind of forgive it a little bit. It needs to be, did you do this deliberately or was it intentional? Kind of like the flagrant or whatever the routine fouls in the NBA. You check for intent. And obviously everyone can argue that they didn't have intent to step on the inside, but I think that's fine, or they have the rule like, it's multiple steps, if you take multiple steps on the inside, you're disqualified, but the one step and you're out, that's stupid.
yeah. And then the last thing was disqualifications in distance events. We all think about James West in the prelims when 1500 gets disqualified. Yeah, false starts in distance races. That there should be no false starts. I think for the most part, I think NCAA is the only ones who kind of are super weird about this, and maybe in high school races it's bad, but yeah, there should never be a false start in a distance race ever.
So mentioning being at the U.S. Olympic Marathon Trials a couple months ago, I was thinking of the women's race. I know I said I wasn't the start line, but I did get to watch it on the monitor. And there was a false start in the women's race. I mean, they brought him back. I can't remember who exactly it was, but they started to go a little bit before the gun. And that would have been the ultimate controversy if they would have been like, all right, Molly Huddle, Steph Bruce, you are disqualified. And I know you ran 1.5 meters, but you will not get to run this marathon. Yeah, totally agree. Maybe, look, I get why they do it because, one, they want consistency with the sprints. And then two, because if not, I'm sure there would be some knuckleheads every single time that would be trying to jump off the line at the perfect moment. So they'd be restarting and restarting and restarting. I don't know. Let's just simplify this, though. No false starts. Everybody just go to the honor system and just get off the line normally. And if you trip, we don't have to worry about you having an ultimate James West nightmare scenario. We call it the James West, if you will, where your entire NCAA season is ruined by the virtue of you stumbling at the starting line. So, of course, there's been other famous examples throughout the years, NCAA championships, I think of. I don't remember it at like Worlds or the Olympics, but yeah, it happens, and it's a nightmare, and they need to fix the rule.
I might have said this on a podcast before, but I remember my high school teammate. I had graduated. I was like a freshman in college, so it was a lot of people I ran with in high school. They were, the underclassmen at the time when I was there, but they had a really good 4x8 that could probably be top 3 in the state of Pennsylvania. So that's pretty good. Pennsylvania's a good 4x8 school. So they had basically had a sub 750 4x8, which at that time in 2007 was pretty good, right? And in order to qualify for states, you had to be top 2 at districts, right? And so it's fine. Like they said to go there and they're going to win districts. However, their 4x8, which again had like 2 153 guys on it, so it was a good team. They got DQ'd for a false start, and so the 4x8 didn't qualify at districts, so then they couldn't go to state. And all of like the rival coaches were like complaining to the refs because they knew that like, hey, you're disqualifying a team that's going to do well at state, and like, that's like a fraternity in the district. Like you kind of like, oh, they have an opportunity to do well. We should make sure they go, and you're disqualifying them over a bullshit stepping on the line. Like literally what he did was the guy said, runners on your mark. And like, he like started like almost falling over the line. He lifted up his back leg. And then the guy said, stand up. And then they disqualified him. And I was like, oh that's God. Bullshit. Especially in a 4x8, high school 4x8. And then, it was a power trip by the ref. I think sometimes these officials like kind of enjoy disqualifying someone because it feels like they had like a purpose. Like they did their job. Yeah, they did their job. But really, like, I felt bad because there's like 2 or 3 seniors on the team, and they would have scored. They would have done well at state, and they got disqualified in a freaking district meet. Oh man.
And they've never got
angry to
over
this
it
day.
in the 13
Never
years since. They've never got over
never
it.
got over it.
That's brutal.
So yeah. Any other pet peeves that you have that bother you?
Like distance running pet
Yeah.
peeves.
My biggest pet peeve is the cool
Go
down.
ahead.
Is when coach says cool down. I don't want to cool down. I just ran a race. I'm going to sleep.
How
I'm laying
important
down.
is the cool down? I'm a
how
cool
important
down
is it?
truther. I'm a cool down truther. Just walk a little bit, like walk over to the gas station to get a soda or candy or something. Like
Exactly. Like get that soft
especially
pretzel,
like
man.
last race of the season, I never ever would cool down. Like, and like the importance to some people, oh, I gotta cool down. No, you don't. You think you're gonna get like you're gonna blow out your knee if you don't go on a short jog? I gotta cool down. You're still gonna be sore tomorrow. Like you just ran a hard race. I need the science behind the cool down. So I need all the information that I mean, it's not. Do marathoners cool down after they've run 26 miles? Here, I need to go run an extra 2 miles. It's like, no.
I mean, they do. They do cool down though.
It's stupid.
At Houston, at the Houston half, which I've gone the past few years, they cool down in like the hotel lobby. They just run like for like 10 to 15 minutes in like the lobby of the hotel, which I'm just always like, man, how do they do this? But I guess that's the difference between an elite athlete and us, is that they cool down and we didn't. And that's why we're here talking
some
about
other things. I mean, I don't cool down after this podcast. Like I don't like whisper with my vocal cords or anything like that. Like I don't need that. I'm ready to go for my day after I get done here. Like I don't get it. I feel like those activities are similar in scope. So I'm just saying I think the cool down is overrated. I get the warm up, you need to bust out some of that gunk in your legs, but I don't know, man. The cool down, I think it's overrated.
Yeah, some people though are like really into cool downs and warm ups, and some people I feel like warm up like are crazy. I'm like, man, aren't you getting tired from your warm up? I mean,
yeah,
I was on some team where they were like, hey, we're running like 4 miles for our warm up, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not doing that. Like, no, I'm not.
No, not in the least. I was famous for about the 10-minute warm up.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, cross country, you're going to be running over a 25-minute race or about there, and no, I'm not warming up for multiple miles here. I'll shake that out in mile 2 of the race. Like I'm not thinking about.
Sure there's a lot of really good runners and like some coaches who are like saying like the blasphemy of shitting on warm ups and cool downs. Like they're supposed to be the voice of the sport, and they're just saying like all this. It's like telling like, hey, basketball players, practice. We're like Allen Iverson right now. Like
practice.
Talking about practice. Who cares? Just show up for the game.
Yeah. Any other thing that bothers me about distance running? God, I'm trying to think. I wish we didn't have to. The shoe companies hadn't tricked everyone into thinking that you need to change shoes all the time. Right now, I'm balling on a budget, and I've been wearing the same running shoes for just about a year, and they're pretty much worn down. But they are just fine. I think the shoe companies have tricked us into thinking we need new shoes every certain amount of miles. My shoes are like down to the threads, and they're still good to go. And they're just now getting into and it's just now getting good with them now that all the foam is eroded. I think definitely the brands have fooled us there.
You're feeling the gravel on your toes now.
There you go. Running. It's kind of like the barefoot running.
I think we need to unlock a conspiracy, though, about these shoe companies. What if they're purposely designing these shoes to fall apart after a certain mileage?
Of course they are.
To make you buy new ones. Similar Apple, where they were like killing the cell phone chart, like the battery life was dying on purpose. What if they're purposely creating shoes that are designed to fail after a certain number of miles?
Right.
This is a big Netflix documentary coming on called Designed to Fail, how Nike made you buy too many shoes.
Yeah. No, that's 100% what is being done there. Foam scrapes off really quick. And but I'm just telling you, if you hang on, You wait till all of the tread on the bottom of the shoe is completely flat. That is when they're finally broken in, and that's when they hit their sweet spot. So, do we have any other emails?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
I guess I think my one other pet peeve I have is like the overly like specific and like routine teammate who like does like just so many things. Like they need to roll like their legs for a certain amount of time. They need to do like all these crazy things. They need to have their gels. They need to have their like different, running. I don't know. Like it's just like a little bit too much. It's like, guys, we're just running a 5K. We don't need to like be like, we're not making a Mona. They treat their body like it's the Mona Lisa with like, oh, they got to like do their IT band stretches and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey man, we're not good. We're not a good runner. We're just running a 5K. I mean, this is me just being high school, being the non-elite athlete that I was, and maybe I'm using jealousy as to shit on the athletes who actually cared about their bodies and did the right but did it the right way. So I'm kind of talking myself into making myself look bad. But you know what I'm saying? Like the people who kind of like, I knew someone who'd roll their, like they would never, they couldn't go 5 minutes without massaging their leg with like a roller. And it's like, they were constantly doing it. I'm like, hey man, like stop. It was just, they just overly caring for your legs.
I think it's some of it's nervous habits. And also, if you're a runner, your family members or friends, if they're trying to get you something for your birthday or Christmas, they're going to get you like the running toys that come with it, foam rollers. Yeah. In my day, the foam roller wasn't as big. It was the rolling stick. I think I had a couple of those. You just bang it up against your calves a couple times. I don't know if it actually does anything. People swear by foam rollers. I have one in my house. I never use it. But I was more interested there in your comparison or your parallel though with the Mona Lisa, treating your body like the Mona Lisa. I'm fascinated how you came up with that. That was I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's me not being good at my improv of talking of ranting about high school teammates who took cross country too seriously.
There you go.
So another email, just kind of talking about something that I think, you were on this podcast. We have two emails kind of asking why we left these two people off our Oregon Mount Rushmore. One comes from Ryan, who said we should have had Phil Knight on the Mount Rushmore. And another guy, Kevin, said we should have had Otis Davis on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. No, I understand. I know about
reasons.
Okay. So obviously I know both those men. One of them is one of the richest men in the world. I figured he's had enough notoriety. Was Phil Knight an athlete at Oregon? I think that's correct. I don't know exactly his history. Obviously, as far as a donor to the school, he's huge. But I mean, I'm not going to put him on the Mount Rushmore with some of the best athletes in world history. Otis Davis was great in the 60s, and he's on the Bowerman Towerman, as it has been dubbed on the House of Run podcast. So I think he's getting his own credit. It's just tough. Listen, I know people love to put these people that ran times that would have been comparable to the modern era, like way back 50 years ago. But like, how am I going to put Otis Davis compared to like Edward Cheserek and Ashton Eaton, Galen Rupp, and Steve Prefontaine? Those are four guys. You're going to put Otis Davis ahead of one of those guys? Like, I can't do that. Like, he ran 45 seconds in 1960. That's in 45.0. That's incredibly impressive. And, I no doubt he had success at the Olympic level, but I'm sorry, but that's not the record anymore. And I know he's a era and he was probably running on cinder tracks, but I don't do that. I don't control for era. Like, I just put everybody where they're at. And I understand that tends to lean heavily onto the side of the modern era, but still yet I couldn't, he's a good athlete, but I can't put him ahead of Rupp, Ches, Pre, and Ashton Eaton.
Yeah, I think one rule of thumb I always think whenever it's talking about debating best of all time athletes across different generations, I always think of the Wilt Chamberlain rule. And by that, I mean, you look at Wilt Chamberlain's numbers in basketball, it's like he was two people. He would score like 40 to 50 points a game, have like 30 rebounds a game. That's never going to happen now. Like no one is going to get 30 rebounds a game because like the sport's different. Wilt Chamberlain was just like, he got all these stats just in a way that isn't possible now, right? And so you can't be like, well, unless like no one is going to say LeBron James is not as good or Michael Jordan is not as good as Wilt Chamberlain because Chamberlain had more points and rebounds. No, they're going to realize, no, it was all about dominating the era and, all that, all the different nuances that comes in that debate. But I think in track and field, when we glorify like Olympic champion, but also like Kenya wasn't running in the Olympics in like the early, 1900s, right? So like there's all these different aspects that like you have to take into consideration where you kind of, when we're creating Mount Rushmores or these virtual Mount Rushmores, you have to give a little more weight towards the modern era because let's be honest, it was harder to be a good track and field athlete in the modern era than it did before that. And that's just a fact. It was harder. And so if you succeeded in a harder era, you should get more credit, So that's, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I saw some criticism, not too much, but some criticism of putting Cheserek on my top 10 list of Oregon athletes ahead of Steve Prefontaine. And I understand the impact is far, the impact of Prefontaine far outreaches that of Cheserek. And some of that, for better or worse, is to do with his premature death. And I know, Prefontaine was a fantastic runner. But at the same time, I mean, Cheserek won 10 more NCAA titles than Steve Prefontaine. And I mean,
he got hurt too. He could have won 2 more.
Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, I know he did legitimately lose that cross country title, but he also did. Yeah. He didn't have a senior outdoor track and field championship season. Like he would have had, 19 titles. So listen, most people don't care where we rank these people or whatnot, but like, there is proper respect where it's due, I think, given to the older eras. But I'm not just automatically going to put Steve Prefontaine number 1 at the expense of Cheserek when Cheserek's been ignored and undervalued for the last few years without that. And I look at, I look at the numbers, man. I look at times and I look at titles. And if you only won 1 or 2 NCAA titles, you're going to be down compared to other people. So I understand the impact of Otis Davis and some of the older guys, but they don't measure up to some of these newer dudes.
And one last thing on the Phil Knight case that Ryan was saying. Basically, he was arguing all of his donations that he's done to the program and like obviously the creation of Nike and all that stuff. Like, do you think though we would have a Galen Rupp and a Cheserek if it weren't for Phil Knight's philanthropy towards Oregon track and field?
Well, I mean, I don't know, maybe not to the full level, but we're not going to put him on the Mount Rushmore. Or what? We're just going to have rich guys on the top of sports Mount Rushmores now? I mean, who's the greatest patriot of all time? Oh, it's Robert Kraft. I mean, no, that's not how it works. Great. He's really rich. He didn't win any of the titles. Maybe he paid for the uniforms, but no, get out of here with that take.
This emailer also put Jerry Krause on the Mount Rushmore of the 90s Bulls. Is that the thing?
Oh, everyone hates that guy. Yeah, everyone hates that guy. Come on.
Have you watched the Last Dance yet? No,
because I just don't have cable, and I'm either waiting for it to. I'm famously an ESPN Plus subscriber, so they're not releasing that doc yet on ESPN Plus. I'm thinking in a few months Netflix is going to have it, and so I'll get to watch it. I mean, listen, I haven't seen that footage, but I mean, I know a lot of this story by being a Bulls fan, and it's fantastic, and I will absolutely watch it. And I'm bummed to be missing it because it's what everyone's talking about online. But I've not seen it. I'm looking forward to watching it. But I feel like I'm familiar with a lot of these stories.
I watched it last night, and I texted you and Kevin. They did a little vignette, like 10-minute segment on Phil Knight, like the origins of Phil Knight and like how Phil Jackson, and how he, his style as a coach and like where he came from and his personality. And I got a lot of Mike Smith vibes from
Mm-hmm.
Phil Jackson, and it kind of makes sense. You know, like if you had to pick a basketball coach to be like who's the track version of Phil Jackson, it is Mike Smith. I don't know.
I know Phil Jackson really into the Zen and Buddhist principles. I don't know where Mike Smith sits on those, but I can see the comparison. I don't know what the does
Mike
Mike
Smith's
Smith
all
have
about getting the mind right, man. Mike Smith is huge on.
Does he have his own
mind
version of the
first,
triangle
body.
offense? What's his version of the triangle offense? I'm
He
curious.
does. He has 4 or 5 racing plans, like racing strategies, and they all have a different name. Like one of the strategies is called Go. Yeah, it's a Pentagon offense. I forget. He told me the different what they're all called. I forgot, but like one of them is called Go, which means you just. Oh no, it's not called Go. It's called Gas, which means just go from the gun. Which is what they did at the 2017 NCAA cross country championships. That was gas, where Tyler Day and Matthew Baxter just went for broke, and it worked, right? So he has different strategies.
All right, I think we should call it here because our producer Alon, I think he's got some place to be. He's got to click over to another tab and start another podcast. So we'll call it there. Email us FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. For myself, Lincoln Shrike. He's Gordon Mack. We will see you tomorrow for another edition of the FloTrack Podcast.